Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Family Sedan channel. An XRP community YouTuber has been sued in a class action lawsuit. It's none other than Ben Armstrong, also known as BitBoy Crypto. And I'll tell you right here, right now at the outset of the video, from everything I've seen to this point, this lawsuit seems absolutely frivolous. Now, I'm not 100% sure of that it's the case for every single one of the defendants that's named. But, I'll just say this. As far as it applies to Ben Armstrong, it certainly looks that way, and I suspect that it's probably the case for others, if not all of them. So I'm going to give you some of the specifics here. And also I'm going to share with you some thoughts from David Schwartz, who, of course, is Ripple's CTO and co-creator of XRP and the XRP Ledger. He chimed in just to share some thoughts on this. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a legal or financial background of any kind. I am not offering legal or financial advice. And you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. And so here's a headline from Decrypt. YouTube influencers slapped with $1 billion lawsuit for promoting FTX. $1 billion lawsuit. And I will say, all of the individuals named here are among the most, famous YouTubers when it comes to finance, and in Ben's case, specifically more so crypto. But there are people who are kind of dabble in crypto in their content on YouTube, but more so in the just legacy finance. And it's all just really large accounts with millions of followers. That's pretty much it. Anyway, piece reads as follows. A group of investors who did business with defunct cryptocurrency exchange FTX brought a class action lawsuit against multiple internet influencers Wednesday, alleging the content creators pushed unregistered securities on their viewers and followers while promoting the collapsed exchange. The lawsuit seeks over $1 billion in damages and was brought against content creators that reached millions online, including BitBoy Crypto creator Ben Armstrong and finance YouTube creator Graham Stephan, among 7 other individuals and the talent management firm Creators Agency. Now, Stephan did not immediately respond to requests for comment from Decrypt. Armstrong told Decrypt that he never received a dollar from FTX, adding that he plans on, quote, countersuing immediately, end quote. And then he also said, I've never spoken with anyone at FTX or as a marketing agent acting on their behalf. Not once. So the allegations against me are 100% false, and it will be extremely easy to provide evidence of this, end quote. And you know how I came across this was from YouTuber CoffeeZilla. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with him. Massive channel, and he's covered extensively what happened with FTX. He's recently been on with Lex Friedman and Joe Rogan. And he tweeted this out the other day, just literally yesterday. He said, breaking, YouTubers promoting FTX are being sued in a class action lawsuit claiming $1 billion in damages. And I was like, whoa. And of course, got an XRP community member in here, no less. I'm like, And it does look bogus, so check this out. Ben Armstrong retweeted that and said, countersuit coming. The lawyers on this case can't possibly be more stupid. I've never had contact with anyone at FTX and never even had a ref link. Show me you are dumb without telling me you are dumb. I'm going to roast these low IQ plebs and their lawyers. And so I wrote back to him, I wrote to him rather on Twitter here, and I said, to Ben, they're going to be in trouble then. You can't just trash someone's name like this. I'm reading the suit now, and it literally claims you were paid by FTX. How would they even know either way if FTX paid you? Doesn't make sense. They're just making claims. And then Ben Armstrong wrote back to me and he said, this is such a slam dunk for me, it's not even funny. It really does look to me like they're just making flagrantly false claims. It really, because if Ben Armstrong's telling the truth, and I have no reason to think that he wouldn't. I can't imagine he'd say that if this weren't true, because that would obviously substantially harm him. So I take him at his word, of course. If that's true, then what the hell did they think would happen? No, seriously, how are you going to make this claim against Ben Armstrong, because they literally claim, I read the suit, not the whole thing, but I read that portion. I skimmed through the whole thing, but that portion in particular jumped out at me. They literally claimed he was paid by FTX. How would they even know that? They're just asserting things. And then there was this from Neil Hartner, who is a Ripple employee. He wrote to me, and he said, "You'd think they'd have some proof that defendants received compensation by FTX. If not, then lawsuit should be immediately dismissed." And so look at this screen grab from the suit. The defendants all admittedly endorsed and promoted the sale of the FTX YBAs, and none of them disclosed in any of their YouTube and other social media posts that they were paid hundreds of thousands and or millions of dollars by FTX and profited from the sale of FTX YBAs in clear violation of SEC, FTC, and various federal and state regulations. But again, what if you weren't paid by them? What if you were just talking about it? What about that? And so there's this video that was chopped up to mislead people. It's a video, it's one of Ben Armstrong's videos, and he's talking about FTT and Solana, and it's sliced up in such a way that it makes it sound as though he's promoting or saying that the token, is something positive to that effect. And I watched that, I was like, well, I know the video that he's talking about because I just happened to have seen the video that they used to slice this up. And so Ben Armstrong shared the whole thing here, and he wrote, this is the whole video. Satoshi Flippers, one of the people that was saying, ripping on Ben Armstrong for promoting FTX or whatever, this or that. Satoshi Flipper shows how unbelievably stupid he is. This is why you cannot believe memes on the internet. No context. It's literally a 10-minute video. He's incapable of watching a video, but is capable of looking dumb. And I actually happen to have already seen this video, but here you can see, I know it looks a little bit blurry. This is just where I paused it to kind of prove the point. He wrote, you can see here's the FTX's token, FTT, and Solana. He was talking about how he's selling them, getting rid of them, and he literally wrote the word evil. It's on your screen, and pointed at it. He literally wrote that those are evil and he's getting rid of them. And somehow some people are circling the scene trying to make it look like he's actually in support of this somehow. It's a bunch of nonsense. It just, I don't like dishonest people that do. I mean, I just saw that. It just kind of started to burn my biscuits a bit. I'm just saying. And then there was this. Okay, so this is back to the CoffeeZilla thread, getting the word out broadly yesterday. And somebody wrote to CoffeeZilla and said, "I can see them coming. I'm innocent. I didn't know it was a scam. But unintentionally hurting your followers toward a scam can be criminally negligent, no?" And it's a fair question, but it's a little bit more complex than that. And this is where David Schwartz jumped in. David Schwartz responded to this guy named Nachi and wrote, "Not if they reasonably believed the information would be helpful and had no way to know of the scam. That's the opposite of negligent." And then somebody named Khaled jumped in and said, "Due diligence shouldn't extend to paid promoters. Is that what you're saying?" And David Schwartz responded and said, "That is what I'm saying. It's not reasonable to expect a paid promoter to do more than minimal diligence on the companies they promote, and there are strong policy and free speech reasons why we should keep it that way." Somebody named Zach wrote to David Schwartz and said, "In the end, these promoters take on the risk of harming their reputations, and in the end, that's what will cost them the most." And then Khaled jumped back in and said, "Some victims of fraud might be satisfied with the promoter being publicly embarrassed and suffer a loss of reputation, but I'm pretty sure most would prefer to be compensated." David Schwartz responded, "Government punishment for speech in the absence of any kind of wrongdoing at all is just the government making people shut up. If you can't possibly tell whether your speech is lawful or not at the time you make it, what can you do other than just not speak?" Which I think is a brilliant point. You're going to squash free speech, if you go the route that some people would want to go with this. And then Khaled responded and said, "David, I agree that going after influencers and promoters in court for simply doing their job is not the best way to seek compensation unless they had an ulterior motive, conflict of interest, or intended to defraud. Not sure how/why you want this to be about government versus free speech." To which David responded, "This is a very important free speech issue. If you impose liability on promoters in the absence of wrongdoing, it will be harder for legitimate businesses that are smaller, newer, or in riskier sectors to speak through spokespeople. If Tom Brady knew that he could be liable for promoting FTX, even if there was no way he could know they were a scam, wouldn't that just make every promoter not promote anything related to cryptocurrency? Wouldn't that censor both crypto companies and promoters? If the government says to Tom Brady, you can say a crypto exchange is great, but we might fine you millions of dollars even if you did nothing wrong, or you can say kids should drink more carbonated sugar water with no liability. What is Tom Brady going to say? Which I think is a very good point. And I haven't talked about this topic on the channel in a long time, but I've certainly thought about this. I've thought about this many, many, many years ago. I thought about this topic before I launched my YouTube channel. Because people say, if you're talking about, anything in finance, whether it's stocks or crypto, what about the idea that you're somehow responsible for people's actions? Well, that's dumb as hell. That is a ridiculous position. Because if that were the case, that just by asserting things, even if you're not telling people to go do a thing, if people do something anyway, based on the topic that's being discussed, imagine what the implications would be if we were shutting all of that activity down. There would be no business news on finance. There would be nothing. Just think about all of the people that come in and talk about stocks and the way the markets might go. That's all gone. You couldn't even have that shut that all down on national television. You'd shut it down on all streaming services, including YouTube. It'd just all be gone. And you wouldn't be able to get that information then and get perspective from people, from professionals that are in the space. People should be able to speak on topics that interest them, without being somehow financially responsible. And that's very obvious. That's obviously the case. And they aren't, which is why this is allowed to exist. A channel like mine wouldn't be able to exist when I'm outright stating I have no financial background whatsoever. I'm just talking about stuff that's interesting to me having to do with finance and crypto. Shouldn't that be allowed? Well, obviously, otherwise you're squelching free speech. And it harms people. Not just the person that can't speak, but the people who can't engage in the conversation and potentially learn stuff. And so that's certainly the way that I look at it. But then Khaled responded and he said, okay, so is Tom Brady an investment advisor? Does he have a broker's license? If not, then what is he doing recommending financial investments in companies he knows sweet FA about? Hey, he's not related to Jim Lamer, is he? Play on Jim Cramer, obviously. And David Schwartz responded, he's not recommending financial investments. He's reading a script to promote a company. He's not delivering his own message or opinion. He's being paid to deliver someone else's. And then Khaled responds, so basically promoters are actors then, and don't really mean what they say because the words aren't even their own? Okay, I think you make a valid point if you can prove it was scripted and they were merely repeating their lines. However, online influencers are totally different. And David Schwartz says, I agree that is different, but the principle is the same. If they didn't do anything wrong, punishing them for speaking is just the government forcing them to shut up entirely. In context, where it's not reasonable to expect a speaker to separate good speech from bad speech, punishing the bad speech equally discourages both the good speech and the bad speech. David Schwartz knocking it out of the park, which is why I want to share this. This is absolutely correct. I mean, it's just, I could say I like a cheeseburger and you go out and you buy a cheeseburger. I didn't tell you to buy a cheeseburger, but you go buy a cheeseburger and then you get addicted to cheeseburgers and then you're fat. Is that my fault? It's obviously not, but there's such a thing as personal responsibility, but it's like, do you want society to be able to discuss finance and crypto topics, or do you not want society to be able to publicly speak about this? And then what's the difference? What about privately? Can you just say it on a one-to-one person basis? It gets stupid. And let's point out how additionally stupid this is. So there's Kevin Poulrath. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right. I wasn't sure who he was, but he's very famous. Apparently, he's got hundreds of thousands of followers on Twitter and on YouTube. I think it's even bigger. It's in the millions, actually. And so Kevin, he's one of the guys named in the suit, and he tweeted out the following. And I think he makes an excellent point here. So if you're on the fence, hopefully you find this persuasive. He says, some weenie baby attorneys from Florida are now suing YouTubers, including myself, over FTX. People need to put their big boy pants on and realize the realtor, because he's a realtor, who refers you to refers you an electrician does not guarantee the work of the electrician. In this case, the analogy would be that's FTX. Anyone finger pointing is also a weenie. Remember, a financial advisor signs a contract with you, is your fiduciary, and is paid to analyze your individual situation. Someone screaming, "Buy Tesla" from a soapbox in London is not a financial advisor. Another example, a realtor who refers you to another agent who receives payment is not responsible for the seller of a house defrauding you. That blame is on the seller or the inspectors, in this case, FTX and insiders, not the agent who referred you to an agent for pay. And that's spot on, obviously. It couldn't be more obvious. Because if your opinion is that people sharing their unprofessional opinions on stuff, if that's financial advice, then that just means that people can't share opinions about anything, because there could be a potential negative consequence for people sharing their opinion on any topic that exists. You're shutting down free speech if that's your perspective, and you're wrong. So anyway, I just thought it's a fun topic of conversation, so I thought I'd share my thoughts given all of this happening. So it looks like this is ridiculous. I'll keep you posted on what's happening in this story, but it really does. I haven't looked in thoroughly in terms of all of the defendants and if any of them actually did anything wrong. But when it comes to Ben Armstrong specifically, I mean, I'm taking him at his word. He says that he never even talked to anyone from FTX and didn't get paid a dime. Then the suit is lying about him, and they don't have evidence to back it up then. So it's frivolous, and it's nonsense, and it should be thrown out. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the Moon Family Sedan.